I was the deciding vote. That is what I have carried for 43 cycles, and what I will carry until my carapace goes cold in whatever survey station they assign me to die in. I do not tell this story for absolution. There is none available. I tell it because I am the last one who was in that chamber. The last one who remembers the phrasing of the motion and the sound the seal made when it pressed into the wax. Because silence has not made the blank sector smaller. It has made it larger. My name is Veth Sorrel. 31 years before the vote, I was a senior cartographer of the 3rd Conclave, Orbital Survey Division, Rimward Annexes. I drew borders for a living. I measured the edge of the known, and I named what was on the other side of it. I was considered, by those who make such assessments, one of the finest practitioners of the discipline the Conclave had produced in 2 generations. I tell you this not as pride. I tell you this so you understand that I was not reckless or young or ignorant. I knew exactly what I was doing when I pressed my mark into that wax. The motion before the conclave that evening was deceptively small in its language. We had been debating the human designation for 11 sessions across 4 cycles. The designation, sector designation Oris Null, though none of us used that name in private. In private we called it the red margin, because the original cartographers had inked it in red as a warning, and the red had never been officially retired, had existed in the atlas since, before any living cartographer had drawn a border. It was simply there, as mountains are simply there, as the cold at the rim is simply there. A zone, a notation, a set of survey flags marked approach restricted, last updated by cartographers who were themselves centuries dead. The motion proposed to reclassify it, not to remove it, or so the language said. To reclassify. To move the human designation from the category of active civilizational zones with restricted approach to the category of unmapped anomaly. The difference, the motion's author argued, was technical and administrative. An active civilizational zone implied ongoing survey obligation, mandatory buffer maintenance, quarterly review, dedicated cartographic staff. An unmapped anomaly required none of that. It was simply a blank. A notation that said, "This area has not been fully charted, and we have not prioritized it." The argument was from a purely administrative standpoint, not without merit. No survey ship had returned from the designation in 260 cycles. No quarterly review had produced new data. The dedicated staff assigned to maintain the buffer had dwindled across generations, from 32 cartographers to 4, and those 4 spent their time maintaining the border markings, not studying what lay beyond them. The zone was, by any measurable standard, a gap in the record. We were not, the motion's author said, erasing anything. We were simply being honest about what we did not know. 7 voted in favor, 6 against. I was the 8th, and I voted in favor. The seal went into the wax at the 18th hour of the 4th watch, and the clerk recorded the reclassification in the master ledger, and the human designation ceased to be an active civilizational zone and became, instead, an unmapped anomaly. And I walked out of the chamber and went home and ate a meal and slept without particular difficulty because I had convinced myself that we had done nothing more than correct a filing error 4 centuries in the making. I will tell you when I stopped believing that. 12 days after the vote, the Conclave's distribution office printed the first corrected edition of the Rimward Atlas. The notation for what had been the human designation now read, in the clean sans sieve type, the press favored. Sector Oris, unmapped. Survey data incomplete. No current designation. The red ink was gone. The buffer markers remained on the physical map as faint gray lines, a ghost. Border, a cartographic scar. But the notation was clean and white and administrative, and said nothing at all about what was on the other side. 3 copies of the corrected atlas were dispatched to the border watchposts. The first courier did not arrive at watchpost Delrim. We assumed a navigation error. Couriers were junior staff. Navigation errors happened. The second courier departed 16 days later, with 2 additional copies for watchposts Calvin and Osser 3. Neither watchpost received its copy. We sent a query signal to the courier's transponder. The transponder did not respond. We noted it in the incident log, and sent a search inquiry to the nearest relay station. The relay station did not respond to our inquiry. That was when senior archivist Tolan Var, who had voted against the reclassification and had said very little in the days since, walked into my office, closed the partition behind her, and placed her hand flat on my drafting table and said, "Veth, we should discuss what we have done." I told her we had done nothing. An administrative reclassification, a filing correction, she said. We sent them an atlas with their name removed. I told her the atlas was a document. Documents did not have consequences of this kind. She looked at me for a long time. She was old, Tholenvar, older than I was then by 30 cycles, and she had spent more of those cycles studying the red margin than any living cartographer. She had voted against the motion not on legal grounds or on staffing grounds, but on what she called historical grounds, which the other members of the conclave had regarded as a polite way of saying superstition. She had said, in one of the 11 preparatory sessions, words I had discounted at the time and which I have not discounted since. She had said, the designation exists not because we are surveying them. It exists because we are telling them we know they are there. I had thought, at the time, that this was a poetic way to frame a bureaucratic function, and nothing more. She took her hand off my table. She said, I am going to the border personally to see what has happened to our couriers, she said. I am telling you this so that if I do not return, someone knows where I went and why, she said. Do not send another corrected atlas until I come back. She did not come back. I waited 60 days. I sent 3 inquiry signals to her personal transponder. No response. I filed a missing person report with the Survey Transit Authority. The authority opened a case and closed it within 20 days, noting insufficient data, and recommended the case be reclassified as navigation incident pending further evidence. I noted the irony of that word, reclassified. I have never sent another corrected atlas. The master ledger still carries the reclassification. I do not have the authority to reverse it alone, and I do not have the votes, and the members of the conclave who voted with me have, one by one, retired or taken postings far from the rimward annexes, and do not respond to my correspondence on this subject. The corrected atlas is the official atlas. The blank white sector is the official record. Somewhere in the distribution archive there are 9 undelivered corrected atlas copies, addressed to watchposts that have not filed a status report in 42 cycles. I have thought, in the years since, about what Tholenvar understood that I did not. She had read the original survey logs, the ones inked in red 400 cycles before my birth, and taken them seriously in a way the conclave had long since stopped doing. I read them after she disappeared. I will not repeat what they said, because those pages are no longer in the archive, removed by someone whose name does not appear in the access ledger. But I read them once, and I understood why the original cartographers had used red ink, and why the notation they added to the border was not a survey notation at all, but something closer to a treaty. I no longer maintain the red margin notation. I am the last cartographer assigned to it, and I have let the assignment lapse, because the one time I attempted to add a new notation to the sector, a simple one, an administrative note, the kind of notation a cartographer adds to an unmapped anomaly as a matter of professional habit, just 3 lines that said boundary integrity unconfirmed. Approach not advised. Last survey data unavailable. My hand stopped above the page and I found I could not write it. Not because I was afraid of the notation itself, because I was afraid someone would read it and go to verify it and not come back. The atlas sits on my table. The sector is white. There is no notation at all, because the last cartographer who attempted to add one did not return, and I am the cartographer before her, and I decided 43 cycles ago that the sector did not need a name. I was wrong about that. I have been wrong about that every day since. I will not add the notation. I will not send the corrected atlas. I will not vote on another motion regarding the human designation, because there is no longer a human designation, and there is no longer a conclave quorum to restore it. And there is only the blank white sector in the atlas that sits on my table, and the silence of every watchpost along that border, and the knowledge that somewhere, on the other side of the line I helped erase, something noticed that we had stopped naming it. I do not know what it made of that. I do not intend to ask.